Good evening, everyone. My name is John Gregoire. On behalf of the planning team for the James River chapter of the Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy, I want to welcome everyone to our meeting this evening. I would like to especially thank the members of our planning team for their hard work, time, and energy in putting together this wonderful program. The title of our meeting is Building a Brave, Bold, Beloved Community. Martin Luther King spoke about the beloved community. He believed that justice was the cornerstone of the beloved community, that justice is a basic human right. Dr. King stated that justice at its best is power correcting everything that stands against love. As we build the brave, bold, beloved community and advocate for justice, we must be persistent, courageous, and passionate. As John Lewis said, we must never, ever be afraid to make noise, to get into good trouble, necessary trouble. So tonight, let us get on with the business of getting into good trouble as we build a brave, bold, beloved community. We are fortunate to have Rabbi Sylvia Skolnick join us. She is Rabbi Emerita of Temple Beth El and a longtime resident of Williamsburg. Rabbi Sylvia will offer the invocation for our meeting this evening. Rabbi Sylvia.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm honored to be with you. At this time of year in our annual cycle of Torah study, Jewish people around the world read and reflect upon the book of Numbers, known in Hebrew as Bamidbar, in the wilderness. We have begun our journey from Mount Sinai, where we entered a partnership with God to bring about a world of shalom, of peace. We wander years in the wilderness as we prepare to enter the promised land. Before taking his leave, Moses implores our people, Tzedek, Tzedek, Tirdof, Lema'an Tichya, justice, justice, you shall pursue, that you may thrive. Holy One, creator of us all, our divine partner, bless those gathered this evening who hear the call to love their fellow human being as themselves. Guide them on their journey as they strive to build a brave, bold, and beloved community. Sustain them as they pursue justice and equity that we all may thrive. Grant them wisdom to celebrate victory even when the path is not smooth. Fill them with hope that one day together we may transform our broken world into a place of shalom, wholeness, harmony, balance, and peace. And together let us say, Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Rabbi Sylvia. So a couple things that I did want to share with you before we get started with the meeting is that one, we do have a timekeeper, Betsy Moncastle. So for those who are speaking this evening, she will be giving the speakers a 2-minute signal for their presentation. And then also for those of you who may have questions for the speakers or regarding any topics that we're discussing in our meeting this evening, please put your questions in the chat room. We have people that will be monitoring those questions and will be able to answer them either after the speakers talk, if it's pertaining to the speaker, or if it's a question relating to a topic or an issue. So with that being said, we do have a special guest this evening, Governor Northam will be talking to us. He can't be here in person. However, we do have a video of the governor, and excuse me. He is going to be introducing our keynote speaker this evening, Kim Bobo. So take it away, Governor Northam. Can't hear.
Director Kim Bobo, a distinguished interfaith justice advocate in our Commonwealth. Kim literally wrote the book on faith-based organizing. When she joined the Virginia Interfaith Center, she mobilized a historic faith advocacy campaign that played a pivotal role in our efforts to pass Medicaid expansion in 2018. From mobilizing congregations and faith groups to write, call, and email their legislators to providing a steady presence at hearings, debates, and rallies, the Virginia Interfaith Center was with us every step of the way. Kim has also been on the front lines of the fight to better protect working Virginians against wage theft, including reforms that remove the farm worker exemption from the minimum wage and require employers to provide a pay stub to workers explaining how they are paid. In our most recent General Assembly session, Kim's leadership and VICPP's advocacy to abolish the death penalty helped make Virginia the first Southern state to pass legislation ending capital punishment, a remarkable achievement that has become a beacon for other states to stop this inhumane practice. And together with Virginia Interfaith Power and Light, Kim has successfully worked to ensure that environmental justice is the policy of our Commonwealth. Her expertise and diverse skills have also led VICPP to unprecedented growth during her tenure. The increasing number of effective working chapters across the Commonwealth has enhanced the grassroots base for a broad interfaith community. With a staff that is second to none, VICPP is an organization that continues to advance a broad vision of justice, working closely with groups like the Commonwealth Institute and the Virginia Poverty Law Center to lift up marginalized voices in ways that make Virginia stronger, fairer, and more equitable. From paid sick days to maternal health for immigrant women, water as a human right, and comprehensive workplace safety standards in response to the pandemic, our team has had the honor of working with VICPP on many important issues, and we are grateful for your continued partnership. So Kim, on behalf of the people of Virginia, I want to thank you and express our deepest appreciation for everything you have done and will do to make our Commonwealth a beloved community. Your passion for justice, your integrity, and your deep faith is a blessing to all of us. Thank you.
Yay, Kim!
Okay, well, that was a surprise, y'all. You definitely surprised me. So, building a brave, bold, beloved community. I do want to thank the James River chapter for inviting me to share with you this evening. I love your theme, and I want to share my thoughts on how we at Virginia Interfaith Center are building a brave, bold, beloved community and directions for doing more to build a brave, bold, beloved community. There are three parts to this. There's building, there's brave and bold, and there's beloved community. So let's break it down a little bit. So building. We are building and growing. Like Nehemiah, who found the walls in disarray and the people in need of food and basic necessities, we face a faith community that has often lost its prophetic voice, and a commonwealth and a nation that has record income and wealth disparities, historic numbers in prisons, record number of pending evictions in the state, and on and on. We are building and growing, and we need to do more if we are to be more effective in addressing Virginia's structural racism, inequality, and challenges around truly building the beloved community. Let me share a few areas in which we have built and we need to do more. people connected to the work. We've grown from 8,000 to 23,000 in the database in the last 4.5 years. Good, but we should be at 100,000 people of faith and goodwill connected to us. Social media and public attention to the work is what will grow our base organically. Chapters and affiliates. We've grown from 7 to 10 or 12, and my colleague Dora Mohammed made a presentation the other day at the board meeting, and she thinks there's an additional 10 communities that are interested in building chapters or affiliating. So lots of potential. Living wage certification programs. There were none, and now there are 3, and we're figuring out how to honor employers that pay living wages and challenge those who don't. Donors. Key to our long-term success will be building the base of individual donors so that we are not beholden to foundations who change priorities each year. Our individual donor base has grown from 17,000 to 170,000 in the last 5 years. But I'd like to see us at 300,000 so that we can really have that substantial base and not have to worry about foundations. If we're serious about the work, we've got to be serious about building a strong base of supporters. So make sure that your will reflects your values and doesn't just give all your money to your kids, perpetuating inequality. VICPP is in my will, and I ask you to consider putting it in yours. Congregational liaisons. In order to strengthen our ties with congregations, we've been recruiting congregational liaisons. We have 115 right now. We'd love to have 200 by the end of the year. Can you help? Could the James River chapter recruit 10 new congregational liaisons in the area? We're also doing monthly calls with these liaisons during the non-GA session, and we invited these folks to join the weekly calls during the General Assembly. This last General Assembly, we had 50 or 60 people on the calls each week. That's an amazing set of activists really learning these issues. Could we have 500 of them by 2025? There are many more places for measuring growth, but we have been building, and we must continue to build. Brave and bold. You look up both words and their definitions are courage. The biblical phrase I love is the one which is repeatedly saying, be of good courage. Wait on the Lord, be of good courage, be strong and courageous, take courage, and many more. The texts repeatedly tell us to be courageous, have good courage, not stupid, run out in front of a car courage, but courage, braveness, and boldness that centers our values. The Virginia Interfaith Center has a history of being brave and bold since its founding in the 80s through today. There are many ways in which we are brave and bold. Let me suggest 3 ways in which I think VICPP is courageous, brave, and bold. VICPP shows the courage to lead. While there are often big issues that we partner with others on, we are willing and have shown ourselves bold and brave in leading. Leading is always scary because you risk failing and looking stupid, but we step out boldly. VICPP fought predatory lending long before we had the ability to win. VICPP has led the efforts to stop and deter wage theft in Virginia. VICPP has gotten the issue of paid sick days on the state agenda, including most of the governor candidates, and passed a down payment on a broader program that will give paid sick days to 30,000 home care workers starting next week. VICPP won prenatal health care for undocumented immigrants. Dora, she helped lead on this effort. Courage to lead, not just join others in issues. VICPP also shows the courage to try to be effective. It is a lot easier to work on issues if you don't try to win or you don't try to be effective. I must say, this is one of the things that bugs me the most about many in the faith community's social justice work. Its lack of commitment to effectiveness. I've often heard people quoting Mother Teresa saying, I'm not called to be successful, I'm called to be faithful. suggesting that perhaps it doesn't matter if we are strategic and effective in our policy work. Being effective requires you to narrow your focus. One time I was in one denomination's Justice and Peace Committee. There were about 15 people, and the group could not narrow the agenda down to fewer than 30 issues. So 15 people going to work on 30 issues. To save my life, I couldn't get them to narrow the agenda. Needless to say, they didn't make a difference on anything. VICPP doesn't just claim to work on 30 issues and make everybody happy, because it wouldn't make a difference for people in the Commonwealth. We struggle with narrowing that agenda because we all care about so many things. We struggle to narrow that agenda and develop a strategy, a plan for trying to win. We don't always win, but we try because it matters for people in the Commonwealth. I think it takes courage to be effective and to try to be effective. And finally, VICPP shows the courage to work in messiness. Public policy advocacy is messy. There are compromises. There are people who disagree with us. You can't just ask, as some have said to me, well, what would Jesus do? Or what would Mohammed or others do? There's nothing in the Hebrew scriptures, Christian scriptures, Quran, or other sacred texts that tells us exactly what our position on paid sick days should be. It doesn't say if it should be 5 days or 7 days. It doesn't say if it should be part-time workers or not. Do you hold firm for the Dream Bill, or do you go ahead and support a down payment that gets paid sick days to 30,000 home care workers? There aren't easy answers on public policy advocacy. When to hold the line, when to compromise. It's tough to figure this stuff out. It's messy. And VICPP has waded into that messiness and shows the courage to operate in messy. Leading, effectiveness, and messy, all three take courage, bravery, and boldness. Beloved community. And finally, the beloved community. The King Center in Atlanta says Dr. King's beloved community is a global vision in which all people can share in the wealth of the earth. In the beloved community, poverty, hunger, and homelessness will not be tolerated because international standards of human decency will not allow it. Racism and all forms of discrimination, bigotry, and prejudice will be replaced by an all-inclusive spirit of sisterhood and brotherhood. VICPP is clearly trying to be and bring about the beloved community in Virginia. It's tough everywhere, but Virginia is special. As the home to some of the earliest displacements of Native people, to our being the capital of the Confederacy, Virginia has historically not been a leader in building the beloved community. And unfortunately, the faith community, particularly the white Christian community, has often been complicit in perpetuating structural racism and bigotry. My staff and board has been reading together The Color of Compromise, a book outlining the church's complicity with racism. Virginia is all over the book. It's listed because of our complicity in racism. A few years ago, VICPP changed its mission to include racial justice in its very mission. We are seeking to live into that mission. We can't possibly address economic and social justice in Virginia without also addressing racial injustice. Why? How do we build that all-inclusive spirit of sisterhood and brotherhood? Our priorities for building this beloved community are really three. First, we want to work on issues that can address and help tackle the structural racism in Virginia. You've seen the issues that the board has selected for this coming General Assembly. Paid sick days disproportionately help women and people of color who are concentrated in low-wage jobs. Removing the farm worker exemption from minimum wage, clearly a legacy of our slave history in Virginia. Seeking training for medical personnel on implicit bias so people of color can get better treatment from our healthcare system. Creating a pilot housing reparations program. Ending solitary confinement and discriminatory access to pretrial justice and cash bail. All of these issues will help us seek the beloved community. We are also trying to build multiracial relationships and organizations. Only 12% of congregations nationally are multiracial, and most of them are Catholic, white and Latino. Very few Black, white congregations in the country. So essentially, our faith communities are segregated. But tackling racism in Virginia has to be a multiracial fight. So Virginia Interfaith Center has got to build a multiracial organization at every level of the organization. We've made great progress at the staff and board level, and I know you in the James River are serious about this effort. But our ability to build the beloved community in Virginia depends on our ability to build strong multiracial organizations, and it will be tough. The faith community is segregated, and we're trying to build a multiracial organization anchored in that segregated faith community. Tough. We're pushing to get statewide racial equity committee to guide us. We're trying to build ties between seminary students who mostly attend segregated seminaries in Virginia. We're finding ways to partner with the NAACP and the Baptist General Convention. I've been reading the book, The Sum of Us, which essentially argues that addressing race will help all of us. Segregated schools hurt all of us. Housing discrimination hurts all of us. So we've got to build this. And thirdly, we've got to engage young people in this work. Many of us on this call today will not see the beloved community in our lifetimes. We're too old. We have to depend on young people, and we have to make sure they are both engaged, but also helping lead the organization. Jamar Boyd, one of our younger staff members, is focused on engaging college students in seminary. He organized a college day of action, drew 65 students from 3 different schools. We've got potential. And young people are increasingly not connected with organized religion, the base of our work. We had a VCU marketing class that did a project with us. How are we going to reach these young people? And what they said to us was that VICPP should lead with its superpower, its commitment to inclusion, diversity, and equity. Young people want to be a part of this. They want to help build the beloved community. So when we work toward and lead with our commitment to build the beloved community, young people will join us, and young people are exactly the ones who can help us build the beloved community for the future. So thank you, James River, for your theme. VICPP is building in lots of ways. We try to be bold and brave in leading, effectiveness, and messiness. And we are building the beloved community through policies addressing racial equity, by building multiracial relationships and organizations, and by engaging young people in the work, building a brave, bold, and beloved community.
Thank you, Kim.
And now I've been asked to introduce one of our fabulous former staff people who has just agreed to come on the board of the ICPP. So welcome to a new board member, Reverend Dr. Lakeisha Cook. She was with us for a short while, but made a huge impact in that short while as the person leading our effort to abolish the death penalty. Now she's moved on and doing racial equity training and curriculum for congregations, but we're going to keep her connected to us. Before that, she was with St. Paul's Baptist Church for 8 years. She worked with a school district in Arizona for a number of years. She has a doctorate in ministry from United Theological Seminary, a master's in education, and an MDiv from Virginia Union. And I'm pleased to call her my friend and welcome and introduce Reverend Dr. Lakeisha Cook.
Thanks so much, Kim. Hi, everyone. Good evening. It's so good to be here with you on this evening. I want to thank the James River chapter for extending the invitation for me to share a little bit on this evening. Ms. Betsy, I promise I'm not going to use all my time, so I hope you don't have to give me the 2-minute warning, but we will see. I have to give honor where honor is due to Kim Bobo and her great vision and leadership with Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy. She has led on so many amazing efforts, and there is no way we could have abolished the death penalty without her leadership and her vision. So I'm so grateful to have worked with Kim, continue to work with Kim and Virginia Interfaith as we move forward. And I don't know about you, I'm still basking in the abolition of the death penalty afterglow. Like, it's still just so amazing that we were able to accomplish something so great. There are moments where it still seems pretty surreal, but there is no way we could have accomplished this great effort without a community of advocates that came together in a very real way. We have said often, we did a webinar a while ago, and we entitled it Faith That Moves Mountains. And I truly believe that our collective faith moved the mountain of capital punishment in the Commonwealth. And I'm just grateful for Virginia's for Alternatives for the Death Penalty, for Michael Stone and his great leadership, for ACLU of Virginia who came on board, for the Black Caucus. There's no way we could have gotten this done without their help. And for Governor Northam, Governor Northam, he is my best friend. He just doesn't know it. But he came in at such a pivotal moment at the beginning of session and came out with such force, saying that it was time to abolish the death penalty. And he was able to pull some votes over that we didn't think we would be able to get. And they were pivotal votes that we needed in order to abolish the death penalty. So we know without his support, there is no way that we would have been able to accomplish this wonderful, wonderful piece of legislation and pushing it across the finish line. I don't want to go into great detail about all the things that we did, because hopefully you do know a lot of the advocacy efforts that we made, but I do want to say that it took all of our faith community in order to get this to happen. So for every email that you sent, for every phone call that you made, for every prayer that you prayed, it made the difference. We had hundreds, I think we ended up with over 430 faith leaders who signed on to a clergy support letter that we printed and delivered to all the legislators, and they kept making reference to that. We were able to do an African-American faith leader press conference at the very beginning of a session. And again, I believe that helped set the tone for us being able to accomplish what we accomplished. But I will tell you something that no one else knows. This is a story that I have never shared before. For me, when I started the work with Virginia Interfaith and started doing the research about really digging into capital punishment here in the Commonwealth, one of the first things I did was I wanted to go and see who was still on death row. And so I looked up the names, Anthony Juniper and Thomas Porter. And every single time that I went in to testify before a committee, every time I had to speak at any time, I made sure to lift those two names up, because this was not just us trying to get a law change. This was about us saving two people's lives. This was about being able to speak on their behalf. And I knew it was very important to keep those names very central in everything that we did. And so every single time I said those names over and over again so that I wouldn't ever forget the importance of the work that we were doing. And I will tell you that once we were able to abolish the death penalty, we did receive message that one of the young men that are on death row, and I don't remember if it was Anthony or Thomas, but they definitely said how grateful they were for all the advocates that saved his life. And so it was Thomas who said it. Thanks, Dora. So Thomas was the one who actually went and said that he was really grateful for the work that we did. And that's so meaningful. We wanted to always lift up the humanity of those who are still on death row. And we're grateful that we were able to accomplish this great victory here in the Commonwealth. And we're using what we learned here to help other states. Kim's been talking to people in Georgia. I've been working with some advocates in North Carolina, in Nevada. So anything that we're able to use here, we're going to help other states because the fight's not over. I mean, we're so glad that we won here, but the fight's not over until we can abolish the death penalty everywhere and also on a federal level. So we continue to push. We continue to build a bold, brave, beloved community with everything that we have and all the gifts and resources that we've been given. So again, I just want to say thank you to all of you. There's no way that we could have accomplished this without you. And we can't wait to see what's next because there's still work to be done. Just because we've abolished the death penalty in Virginia doesn't mean we're done. We need to continue to dream and imagine a more just criminal justice system in which we always hold up people's humanity, and we're looking for restoration, not so much leaning into the punitive side of criminal justice. And so we're going to keep doing the work. So thank you again for allowing me to share. Ms. Betsy, I hope I kept in my time, and I can't wait to see what else we can do next. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Dr. Lakeisha Cook. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us this evening, and it's wonderful that to hear what you had to say regarding abolishing the death penalty. I would like to take this opportunity now to introduce our next speaker, Dora Muhammad. Dora is the Congregation Engagement Director for Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy. She is an author, a documentary photographer, and the founder of the AWARE Project. It is a program that advocates for women's rights. I was teasing Dora a little bit the other day and telling her that she is the Energizer Bunny for Virginia Interfaith. She's one of the hardest working people that I know, and we couldn't have done this meeting this evening without her assistance and her help. So Dora, thank you for everything you did to make this meeting happen. And we are delighted to have you join us as one of our speakers this evening. So with that, Dora, you're up.
Thank you, John. Very humbled by that. It's always an honor to be with our members and our advocates, and definitely those that are in leadership, really organizing us on the grassroots level. So thank you all to everyone from the James River chapter for inviting me. And so I'm, as the Congregation Engagement Director, I'm going to talk to you all about one of the building blocks that we use for the organization. Our chapters are our cornerstone, if you will. And so I'm going to share my screen briefly to talk about our Congregation Liaison Program. And so at the core of what I do, it is really trying to deepen our relationships. So it's not just the moment of a campaign. Listening to Kim and Lakeisha, even though I worked side by side with them, I'm still inspired, like just fresh, just hearing them tonight. And so what do we do after that? When we get this energy, this surge of wanting to be a part of this, wanting to help move this forward? Well, there's a few ways you can do that. One of them is by becoming a congregational liaison. The other one is if you are a part of a congregation, to really work to have your congregation be an anchor around one of our issues for our chapters. And thirdly, within our chapters, if you're not affiliated with a congregation, you still can become a key activist moving our work forward. At the end of the day, our chapters are really supposed to be like a nucleus where we all can connect and build relationships to move this work forward. together. But I'm just going to delve just a little bit deeper into our liaison program, the role of a liaison. Primarily, the liaison is a bridge between your clergy leadership and our staff. So your clergy leader should be able to tap you on the shoulder and understand everything that your congregation is doing to move our work forward. I tend to really try to respect clergy's time. And so you are sort of a bridge for me to communicate, answer their questions, and you really serve as a wonderful sort of buffer in that relationship. You're also a bridge to your congregation and our staff. So it's very key that if there's groups or committees that's already engaged in social justice work, or I then try to find ways that innovative ways that people wouldn't necessarily think connects with our work, but things that you all are doing. So I generally have like one-on-one conversations with liaisons to learn about your congregation, to learn about the activities that you're all involved in terms of acts of mercy and benevolence, and see how our advocacy platform can become extensions of these activities that you're already a part of as a faith community. And so then we work to connect people that's leading that work with our staff that's leading that work. So they develop the relationships. And so you're really like a connector. Now, most liaisons definitely build small teams, like 2 to 4. This work does not depend on massive movement of people. We definitely don't want a liaison to get burnt out. So we encourage liaisons to build a team, to identify people within your congregation that are passionate about social justice. But you really can do it with just 2 or 3 people. And with your team, you kind of strategize how to engage your congregation in our work. And so we definitely encourage that. And I'm here to help you. And then the last thing I want to talk about with our chapters, Kim had mentioned it in her remarks, with me working to move our congregations to become deeply connected to our chapters, it kind of opened up my engagement aperture, if you will, to say, okay, well, we want our chapters to all grow together in sync with one another. And so what we're beginning to do this year is to really set up volunteer teams where people can get involved in their chapters. And so there is about 6 different small teams, again, 2 to 3 people, just sharing the work so that people don't get burnt out. Everything that we're doing, I try to respect, understanding that everyone that is with us are volunteers. And so it helps to have 2 or 3 people to kind of share the load. The other new thing that's not here, but as a way that we're creating channels for you all to communicate with the leadership teams of each chapter, is developing working groups. And these are sort of more like focus groups where you can really talk through issues, talk through what's happening on the local level, so that you can really begin to discuss activities and solutions and strategies together. And it's a way to feed this into the leadership team. And so again, the whole idea is to make us more connected to one another as we do this work. Here's my email address. I am an email away. Please reach out if you're interested in becoming a congregation liaison. We have a packet. And again, I do one-on-one, so I'm able to answer all of your questions. And generally, if your congregation is new to advocacy, I tend to also meet with your clergy leader because it helps. Again, this is about relationship building. So we don't do this work in the dark or silos. We do this together. So I am available and happy to work with you all. And with that, I will turn it over to the next portion of the program is really going to go into what it looks like in terms of their local priorities. So we have everyone at the chapter, and I believe she's here. So the chapters are also an opportunity where we galvanize to work on our state platform, but then each chapter also has the opportunity to work on local issues. And so you'll hear from, I'm trying to find it, Tara Taylor, representing Moms Demand Action. She's going to talk about gun violence from a health perspective, which is one of the priorities of the James River chapter. And then following her, we'll hear from Mason Mosley and John Gregoire, part of the leadership team for the chapter. And they're going to talk about their legislative connection team. And that's sort of, again, building the relationships with our legislators. And so with that, here is Tara.
Okay, sorry. There we go. All this time, you'd think I'd figure out where the mute button was. Sorry. So I am Tara Hassan Taylor. I am the Virginia State City Gun Violence Prevention Lead for Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. And I think this is my second time speaking with your chapter, so thanks so much for having me back. So we know gun violence is a national public health epidemic that exacts a substantial toll in the US. Gun violence includes homicide, violent crime, attempted suicide, suicide, and unintentional death and injury. We can further break that down into smaller categories like intimate partner homicides, fatal and non-fatal police violence, transgender homicide, etc. That's an average of about 105 deaths and more than 230 injuries from firearms every single day. And unfortunately, we know the majority of that is death by suicide. So we hear about all the big mass shootings that capture the news stories, but in reality, it's the everyday gun violence that's the thing that causes our communities the most harm. We recognize things like food insecurity, housing insecurity, and inequity in education, and we realize that all of these things are causing trauma in communities. So gun violence should be considered a public health issue and definitely not a political one. An epidemic that needs to be addressed with research and evidence-based strategies that can reduce morbidity and mortality. Gun violence affects people of all ages and races, from the doctors who treat the patients to the survivors of gun violence. An entire community can be shattered by one gunshot. So some of the ways that we know that people are working right now to address this as a public health crisis is that the Virginia General Assembly and the CARES Act that have recently been passed down from the federal level have addressed some of the necessary problems with addressing the epidemic by funding. Funding is one of the main issues and one of the hardest ways that we fail the effort. And so the frustrating part for a lot of us that do the work and for the people in the communities currently is that most of the time this money gets funneled through police departments to do community programs or given to larger organizations. And then us, the people on the ground doing the work in the communities and the people who actually live in the communities really don't see any benefit from that money. So what I'm trying hard to do in Virginia is find out where that money is going by locality, and also, make sure the people who need it the most are seeing some of that come through them. And so with every town we do a couple different ways we believe that can happen on a community level. The first is street outreach programs. That street outreach programs employ a public health approach to violence intervention, almost like it looks at it as like a disease that's contagious. And so we have to stop the disease from spreading and interrupt it. Street outreach organizations do exactly what they say. They send community interrupters out into the community. And these are people that live in the communities. We call them credible messengers. So you're not going to go, I'm not going to go into a community I don't live in and try to interrupt the violence, but these are actually the people who, may have been released from prison and are coming back into their communities, things like that. Another way we do this is by group violence intervention programs. That you'll hear them called sometimes focused deterrent programs. They center on the belief that violence can be prevented if individuals believe the cost associated with the violence outweigh any potential benefits. I'm just going to roll through these really quick because I'm scared I'll run out of time if I take too much time on each one. The other, community-driven crime prevention through environmental design, is a big, long way to say that a gun violence reduction strategy is centered on like a multidisciplinary approach of crime prevention. We use urban and architectural design to build natural environments. So you're talking about green space, gardens, community centers, things like that. Hospital-based violence intervention programs are exactly what they sound like. We're meeting the victims and their families immediately after the violence occurs, and trying at that point to offer counseling and set them up in programs that they won't go back out into the community, cause more trauma and violence. And then safe passage programs are ways that we prevent safe passages, safe routes to schools, to and from school, and that reduces students' exposure at a young age to gun violence and hopefully interrupts some of that trauma. So those are some of the ways we work on that. And that's a lot of the research we've already done on Everytown. So I can recommend a couple of things that you can look into a little further, which is there's a PBS documentary called The Interrupters. It's a free documentary. If you haven't seen it already, it's wonderful. And it describes a lot of these people who do the violence interruption. If you want some more information on how gun violence breaks down in your community specifically, everystat.org. I will put that in chat when I'm done talking. It's hard, I can't type and talk, sorry. So that breaks down your gun violence. It can be congressional district or what type of violence. It can break it down any way you want. And it's pretty amazing to take a look at. And then the third thing is citygrip.org is a way that you can go in and look at all those things I just mentioned about the city gun violence reduction insight. And it's a portal to help communities make a plan, basically. And so legislatively speaking, I don't know what that's going to look like or how that might mesh into any of the priorities you guys are looking at, but I think we can continue to see them push things about funding, and we can continue to see things like background checks. Yes, Mike, I can do that for you. Just one sec. So background checks, closing loopholes, things like that, making the laws a little stronger, and also ghost guns. If you don't know what ghost guns are, a really quick explanation is you buy all the parts to the guns. There's no ID numbers or ways to identify them. You don't have to go through background checks or anything like that. It's a very simple process. You build it in your home, and it's a way to circumvent gun laws. So all of those things are also being looked at on the federal level right now, so it should be pretty easy to get info on. And I will put all of that in chat, and if anybody has any questions, I can answer, or I will try to. And John, I don't know who's next, I'm sorry.
That's okay, Tara. Thank you so much. We appreciate you being with us this evening. And so for the next part of our meeting, we're going to talk about the Legislative Connection Team project. And so, Dora, when you get a chance, if you could put up the first slide, that would be great. So Mason will talk about the why we're using this as one of our focus and priorities. We've been working on this project for a while, and we will continue to have it as a main focus for us moving into the future. So you're up, Mason.
We certainly need your help on this. The legislative connection teams are meant to establish a direct relationship with legislators throughout the year. They want to hear from constituents and interested voters. Our VICPP issues can be presented in these meetings, and as importantly, we can learn legislators' priorities. They depend on us to speak up at hearings and inform the larger community on bills they are working on. More than likely, you will speak to a legislative aide or chief of staff in arranging appointments. Practice before a meeting is helpful. Select the points you want to make and have as many of the legislature's constituents speak as possible in a meeting. Stay within the time allotted and be sure to learn the legislators' priorities. Keep a record for the larger VICPP community. Please join a legislative connection team. Each team will have a leader to keep you informed and answer your questions. Thank you for being here tonight. It means a lot to those of us who've been involved in the planning.
Thanks, Mason. And so if you are thinking about joining a Legislative Connection team, or you have questions or anything related to this project, feel free to contact me. You'll see my email there. I'll be happy to talk to you about it. And just to reemphasize that those who join the team are actually mentored by the team leader. So the team leader will work with you closely and mentor you through this process. And so we believe at the James River chapter that ordinary people with a passion for justice can do extraordinary things. So keep in mind that our legislators do want to hear from us, and getting involved in this type of project is a really good experience and allows you to have an opportunity to talk to our legislators regarding what we talked to them about are some of the issues that the interfaith is focusing on. Kim had mentioned earlier in her talk about some of the issues. The abolition of the death penalty was something that we talked to our local legislators about. And so I encourage everybody, if you're interested, to give me a call and we will get you started or answer questions, etc. So anyway, with that being said, the next few minutes, we're going to take time out to honor and recognize two local legislators, Delegate Marcia Price and Delegate Mike Mullen. And to do the honors, we're going to have Mason talk about a meeting that we had recognizing Delegate Price. So Mason is a constituent of Delegate Price. So with that, go ahead, Mason. Let us know how that meeting went.
It was a real good meeting, as you'll see in a moment. And here's what I said yesterday in making the presentation. Delegate Price and Chief of Staff Tempest Boone, it is my joy on behalf of the Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy to honor you for the work at this year's General Assembly sessions, which built on the successes of the 2020 session. Your leadership on committees served the 95th District and the Commonwealth. The passage of your bill, HB 1890, the Voting Rights Act of Virginia, reinstates protections denied by the Supreme Court in 2013 rulings on the 1965 Civil Rights Act. Thank you. We also want to express our gratitude for your efforts in abolishing the death penalty in Virginia. Thank you. You have led on wage theft reforms, expanded the Virginia Human Rights Amendment definition of employer that allows for domestic workers to be covered. You saw that tenant protections were extended during and after the pandemic. Our VICPP director, Kim Bobo, indicates the details may not have been pretty on that one, and Delegate Price agreed. You led the legislature on racial equity and regularly challenge your colleagues to acknowledge and address racial equity. And just this past Sunday, your Until Freedom Comes speech on Juneteenth was powerful, joins an historic narrative, and your call to refuse to seek refuge in privilege and silence challenges us to continue this work together. The VICPP and the James River chapter thanks you both for tireless efforts on the community's behalf, and we made some presentations. We had some gifts. We did this at Hilton Christian Church, and we certainly appreciated them offering us some space.
Thanks, Mason. Dora, is Mike Mullen, he should be in attendance.
He is here. And I think he went on screen. Yes, give me 1 second. I will spotlight him while you talk about him.
I was just going to say, can we, he has the ability to unmute and mute himself?
Yes.
Okay.
Hi, still here.
Good evening, Delegate Mullen. All right, Charles.
Right. Good evening, everyone. I am Charles Swadley, and I am a member of the James River Chapter Planning Team for this event. I just lost my screen here. What happened? All right, I've just lost my screen. Let me get back to it, please. I don't know what happened. I think I'm still, Mason's material is still being shown, I think.
Well, actually, Charles, your slide is up, and so we can hear you, we can see you. So you're coming in loud and clear.
All right, except I don't have my material.
I can vamp a little bit if you need me to do, if you need me to do a little stand up.
I think if you would take off this screen just for a second, John, I can get to there you go. Thank you very much.
Okay.
All right, that's worked. So anyway, Mike, I'm back to you again with what I have here prepared. Good to see you, your cheerful presence. The Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy advocates, as you know, for economic, racial, environmental, and social justice in the halls of the Virginia General Assembly. And one of our greatest allies in this legislative process has been, and it continues to be, Delegate Mike Mullen of the 93rd House District. Mike has worked tirelessly in Richmond on behalf of his constituents and all Virginians to reform our criminal justice system, dismantling the school to prison pipeline and creating youth courts to divert youth offenders from the traditional juvenile court system. Through Delegate Mullen's efforts this year, Virginia became the 23rd state and the very first state in the South to abolish the death penalty. And I think we all need to give an applause right now for that.
Wow. Wow.
Acknowledging that capital punishment is a profoundly racist institution. Delegate Mullen was responsible for drafting the House version of the legislation, leading the charge to end the death penalty. Thank you, Mike. We also remember that Mike was a powerful voice with us in our efforts for passing Medicaid expansion. He has helped Virginia set a high moral standard of caring for the least of those among us in the South. He has led the struggle for economic, environmental, and racial justice in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So join us in applauding the extraordinary skillful efforts of Delegate Mike Mullen to further the vision of a beloved community. We recognize that Delegate Mullen's personal religious faith is reflected strongly and positively in his collaboration with the interfaith community to create a bold, a brave, and compassionate new community. Thank you, Mike, for being with us tonight.
Yay!
And please accept these expressions of our sincere gratitude for the diligent and faith-filled work you have done to bring bold hope for a better tomorrow. We will be presenting to you something more concrete in person in the near future, but for now, we just thank you and appreciate you with all the blessings for continuing service. Congratulations, Mike, and blessings on your being here with us tonight.
So Charles, I just want to say thank you. And I wanted to say thank you to everybody at the Interfaith Center. I will tell you this as somebody who is a person of faith, particularly somebody who has gone to the Catholic University of America, who's grown up in the Catholic faith. This has been a little bit of a tough week. And so it's nice to be with people of faith this week, and it's nice for a little bit of affirmation. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Blessings on you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. What we would like to do now is to, we're coming to the end of our meeting, but I did want to let everybody know that the meeting has been or is being recorded, and that you will be able to view it on YouTube. So for those of you that would like to have the opportunity to look at it again or tell your friends about it, we are going to be on YouTube. We'd like to thank everybody for joining us this evening for our meeting, and we'll probably have another meeting in the fall, so keep an eye out for that. We also will have an opportunity to hear a benediction from Aman Kovadia, and he wasn't able to be with us in person this evening. However, we do have a videotape of the Aman's benediction. And just to give you a little background information on him, Aman Shahid Kovadia has a PhD in Arabic literature and has served as an imam in Central Virginia for over 2 decades. He is also the assistant professor of Arabic and Islamic studies and has held various positions at colleges and universities in the state for close to 20 years. Imam Shahid was born in apartheid South Africa and studied in the Middle East and in England. He is married with 4 grown children, and we thank him for ending the meeting with this benediction.
In the name of God, the ever-loving, the most compassionate, I greet you all with the greetings of peace, salam and shalom. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May the peace and blessings of the Almighty be upon you. God says in the Quran, وَلِلَّهِ الْأَسْمَاءُ الْحُسْنَى فَدَعُوهُ بِهَا. And to God belongs the most beautiful of names, and with them call upon him. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and upon his fellow prophets and messengers that preceded him, taught us to supplicate to the Almighty using the names of God. And in our tradition, we have 99 beautiful names and attributes, including, perhaps to make it 100, the greatest name of all, Allah, and many of the others that include the omnipotent, the all-knowing, the oft-forgiving, the ever-present, etc., etc. And so one prayer that we've been taught to make after every ritual prayer includes one of the names and attributes of God, As-Salam, the source of all peace, the perfect peace, the epitome of peace. And so Prophet Muhammad used to say, and encouraged us all to say after the ritual prayer, which we do 5 times a day. He said, Allahumma anta salam. O God, you are perfect peace. Wa minka salam, and you are the source of that peace. Wa ilayka yarji'u salam, and unto you is the return of that peace. Fahayyina rabbana bisalam. So give us life that is full of that peace. Wa adkhilna al-jannata dar as-salam, and enter us into the abode of paradise, the abode of all peace. Tabarakta wa ta'alayta, ya dhal jalali wal ikram. Blessed are you, and Almighty, owner of majesty and honor. This is a prayer which is essentially what Islam stands for, and Islam is derived from the word salam, the word peace. Among the other attributes in which the Almighty is described includes also, as mentioned together in the Quran, Al-Hakamul Adlul Mubin. And we pray using these words, Al-Hakam, the epitome of justice, Al-Adl, the most just, the equitable, the impartial, Al-Mubin, clear and manifest, Al-Haq, the truth and the ultimate reality. And so we pray to the Almighty using these words to deliver us to justice, to come as a savior for all those amongst us, close to us, our neighbors, around the world, those who are oppressed, those who are suffering indignation of different sorts, occupation, apartheid, oppression. We ask the Almighty, the most just, we ask Him to ease the suffering, to remove the burdens and the hardship, to provide peace, freedom, liberation, equity, and justice to people of all of the world, wherever they may be. We pray to the Almighty using these names to answer our prayers. Amen. Thank you very much. Peace be upon you all.